thing that we have, because we still need to stop this pipeline, and for some reason it's just fallen from our memory, I feel, collectively. We lost another one. We don't even want to acknowledge that we lost a little bit. And I believe as a people, we need to examine and be critical of what we're doing in an open and loving space so that we can evolve and that we can win, because that's necessary. So Jessica and I decided, for those reasons, Jessica and I decided to come out and speak about this, because this is a tactic that has been used historically successfully for the liberations of people all across this globe, and including in this nation. So it's not anything new, but for some reason it's off the table, or it was off the table, and it's not something that we talk about. It's something that we should be afraid of. And the only reason I see for that fear is because of the quote-unquote consequences from the state. And so for Jess and I to stand firm and say, hey, you know what, we did this. We're glad that we did it. Too bad we didn't do enough of it. We're sorry that we fit. And it's truly, because I do feel a great obligation in my life, and I feel that I dropped the ball on it. So this is another way that I can act, still in integrity, still in honesty, transparency, and remind us all that we have to stop this. There's a Line 3, there's the Mariner East, there's the Rover, there's the Diamond pipelines. And these are all a great threat to our livelihoods. And with the Dakota Access Pipeline, we saw this entire nation wake up to the dangers of business as usual. We also saw the inadequacies of our government and our shortcomings as a people to not stop this. You know, that unexamined belief that we, the people, have the say. Well, when we said something, it wasn't listened to. It wasn't considered at all. We went to the public meetings, and you can read the decisions even here in the Iowa Utilities Board, and you already know from the first page on their final decision which way they're going to go. So what's with that? Is it because our judicial systems, our bureaucratic systems, our legislative systems, all of our systems are not working anymore? It's a prime example that that's the case. And it's also a prime example of how direct action and works. And by direct action, I don't exclusively mean taking a blowtorch to an empty barrel. I mean going to a public hearing, and if they're not listening to the people, then you shut it down. You take direct action. That's your civic action. That's your duty. So coming forward, claiming this, willing to go through the legal process, although it is extremely unjust, to face the fear that we have as a collective of our government. Why do we fear our government? That's something true that we don't want to acknowledge. So let's take it on. I can take it on. But we need more people to take it on boldly, with integrity, from their hearts. And the whole idea of like take this nation back, like take it back from the government, I guess. Take this land back from the government or something where we are actually participating. We are actually creating strong and vital communities that support each other, that can get things done. So about state repression, I believe 2 weeks ago, there was a thunderous boom at the front door. Guns were drawn by white men that really looked like a lot of the men that were in Charlottesville the other weekend as well. And they came with their guns drawn. busted the door and threw her on the floor, threw her in cuffs and everything, guns drawn, and kicked us out of our house, and did this whole thing that they're legally allowed to do. So that's a form of like direct state oppression, and I experienced it, and it was a bit scary. But as I was sitting on the front porch with Jess and our housemate, I saw the government's response, and I said, geez, I must be doing something right for them to pay so much attention.
Yeah.
So, it ain't no big deal. It sucks. But this is the reality of the situation. That can happen to anybody. It does happen to so many people on a daily basis, these raids. So we live in this country, and it is oppressive. It is violent. And it's something that needs to be confronted through personal risk and through strong communities that stick together for what is right. And that is protecting life itself. It's just the basics. You don't have to go into these ideologies. It's just the basics. So, yeah, things are kicking off. And I'm happy for it, because now we can talk about it openly. Property destruction is a viable thing. It's nonviolent, which is great, because I don't think that you can do that whole ends justify the means thing. That line of thinking comes from the government and how they have excused genocide, continuous genocide, and that's something that's intolerable. And if we are trying to create better communities, we can't cut corners. We have to act with integrity every step of the way. So the ends don't justify the means, and I believe that's ultimately why we stuck to nonviolence, because I don't want to have to excuse my behavior ever. I want to be able to stand behind it. So that's something to keep in mind as we all move forward in the many struggles that we have. We're boxed in, and individually we need to answer that call of responsibility that we each have, and that means risk, and that's okay. Since coming out, it's been this really reassuring, comforting thing that it doesn't matter what the government says, it doesn't matter what propaganda they are spewing, because that human connection that I share with many of you is legitimate. And that is something that can never be trumped by fear. It can never be trumped by some ideology. It is something that is legitimate. And that is where our power comes from. By being secure in your integrity, in your connection with life. And then sharing that with your neighbors legitimately, authentically. And that's the real stuff. And that's something that cannot be broken apart by these psychological operations of COINTELPRO, stuff like that, where they do this counterinsurgency tactics here at home, quelling dissent. So, anything else?
So good.
So we have a big road ahead of us, and I think if we walk each step intentionally with integrity for the future and for those around us and ourselves, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. So go and take risks in that from your heart. You'll be protected. They didn't catch us. And I believe that is truly from acting from our hearts. We were protected in that way. We had that. That is something that cannot be touched by fear. So you don't let it in. Even when they are pointing the guns at you and throwing you on the floor. It doesn't matter.